Welcome to the FMCG Guys, the podcast that dives into the innovation, strategy, and trends shaping consumer goods and retail in Europe and beyond.
Welcome to the FMCG Guys podcast. I am your host, Daniel Torres, live from Barcelona, and I'm joined by no other than one of the best podcast co-hosts in the world and one of the top FMCG rising stars, no other than Christina Nicolaou, straight out of Athens, Greece.
Straight out of Athens, and I get more and more compliments with every new episode we do, Daniel. Thanks for that.
Really?
Yes, I think that you are giving me more compliments with every episode.
I thought you were like hearing people in your network giving us compliments. I hope that's happening as well.
I hope so too, but I haven't heard anything.
Oh God, goodness. Network, give us compliments, please. We need a pat on the back every now and then. But Christina, we've come a long way with the podcast. And but today we're going to, in some way, go back to where I started, when I started along with a small headset in my office at the time. And we're going to go with someone who at the time was nice enough or crazy enough to join me as guest number 3. And that was in 2020. So it's almost like prehistory. And it's no other than Volker Zöller, who's the President Consumer Goods EMEA at Essity. Hi, Volker. Thanks for daring to come on the show again.
Hi, pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
At least you've seen that. I think you made the right bet, because we actually took the podcast seriously with time, and we've created something that I think is pretty cool.
No, I think you have developed a great format, really.
Thank you for that. You're one of the OG, we can say, on the podcast then, and you helped a lot with setting this up.
Don't call me old, call me senior.
No, OG,
as in original gangster.
So Volker, I will leave the show and the show notes of the podcast, the link to the first episode we did. I think it's a good exercise, because at that time we were in a very particular time with COVID and so on, when we made some cool reflections. But in case somebody didn't listen to that episode, can you tell us a bit who you are and what you do at Essity?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Essity is a leading hygiene and health company with approximately 15 billion euros of global sales. We are roughly half in B2B, half in B2C, and we are active in more than 150 countries. Myself, I'm the president of Consumer Goods EMEA, which is Essity's retail business in Europe, Middle East, Africa. That's around about 5 billion in the 15 billion portfolios. I'm 10 years in role and already 30 years with the company.
And it's been, 5 years since you had this chat with Daniel, as you mentioned. I'm very curious, how have these years been?
I mean, I would say very busy, unprecedented, challenging, but I think also interesting at the same time. Actually, it started already for us in 2019. If you remember, 2019, the new European Commission, the Green Deal, with a super high focus on sustainability. And then 2020, the COVID year, and especially for us being in health and hygiene, you remember the panic buying, the empty shelves of toilet papers, all discussions with our retail customers were very much about product availability. 2021, we had a pulp crisis. Pulp is the most important raw material in our biggest category. Then 2022, the terrible war in Ukraine started with an energy crisis. We're also very energy intensive in our production. And then 2023, 2024, the years of hyperinflation, of a downtrading consumer. So very, very interesting here. And the big question is now, what will 2025 bring?
Yeah, Volker, when you came on the show in 2020, we thought it can't get stranger or more unstable than we were then. But time has obviously told us that wasn't true.
Yeah, this is absolutely true. This is true, yeah.
And it's been a very turbulent, 5-year period, I guess, for all companies from the business side, but also very much transformational in terms of culture. So I wonder, how have you adapted, personally with your experience, but as well as in the company?
I think, first of all, we have managed the move to the fully digitized world very well. We have, like many other companies, we have moved in 2020 approximately 8,000 employees overnight in home office. And there have been, in my opinion, two important success factors. Number one is the technical infrastructure worked very well. That's a precondition. And the other one is we have a very strong company culture. And I think in our first podcast, we also talked very much about company culture, which is based on commitment, care, courage, and collaboration. And that was very, very helpful. Meanwhile, we are working in hybrid mode, so practically slightly different country by country. 40 to 50% of the working time is from home. But we still believe that the office is the most important place to be, and our employees have accepted this very, very well. But we have also invested quite some money in our office spaces meanwhile. It's a little bit different what other companies are doing. They have more trying to get some efficiencies. We have invested in this because we believe we need to make them more attractive and offer more space for collaboration and creativity.
And I mean, it's been interesting because I remember when we spoke in 2020, not to over-reference that podcast, but you were coming from a transformation in which you went from SCA Hygiene to Essity, becoming more of a consumer goods company. I guess that these post-COVID years have been like a continuation of that transformation. No, but I think you probably got there in a good place through having done that exercise of focusing on your culture, no?
Yeah, I think we always said that this is not a revolution, it's an evolution. We could build on the strong values of SCA in the past. So the care and the collaboration element were always very, very strong. And we said we have to improve more on the commitment, on the courage to take the lead, to lead and shape a market. And this is in the last 4 or 5 years where we really have been focusing on.
And I think you'd mentioned to me in another conversation that as part of like that, the cultural transfer, the ongoing cultural transformation, you've done a new office in Munich, which has been selected like, I don't know if the best in Germany or one of the best in Germany.
Yeah, this is something we are very, very proud of. We have moved 1.5 years ago from I call it very functional office in the Munich area to the so-called HEADS building in Munich. And this building has higher standards and certification when it comes to sustainability and digitalization. But for us, it offers also unique possibilities to collaborate and work based on your individual needs. It's a great mix, I'm always saying, of our company's DNA, which is very much in sustainability and in the digital area, but also our beliefs and behavior, like the care and the collaboration element. And I mean, the intention, of course, was to make us an attractive employer. And as you know, in a very competitive market for talents, and the satisfaction of our employees is very high. And the office was now rated, as you just said, in the so-called Liesmann Index as the best workplace in Germany. Something we are really proud of.
Not bad. There's a few offices in Germany. And Munich is basically like one of your main hubs. What do you run out of Munich?
Yeah, we have the headquarter of Essity is in Stockholm, in Sweden. And then we have 4 business units, myself leading the biggest, Consumer Goods EMEA. We are headquartered in Munich, but in reality, of course, not everybody is working there. Then we have Professional Hygiene headquartered in Philadelphia. We have Health and Medical headquartered in Gothenburg, and Consumer Goods Americas headquartered in Mexico.
And what does, I mean, having the best office in Germany, I mean, what does it look like in reality? I don't know if you could illustrate us a bit what the office is like or anything that would particularly surprise us.
No, let's say we have, as I said before, we have designed it for the individual needs of the people. We have people who need, for example, to work in a quiet area, very focused. So there are scenes where people are not talking, but then we have also collaboration areas which are very open, look like a cafeteria, and you are sitting there with your laptop. We have terraces with views to the mountains and stuff like that. So it's open space, everything. It's very, very flexible. And we have 45 meeting rooms only for 1 or 2 people. So if you have a conversation with a colleague, you simply go, you cannot book them, but you can also book big meeting rooms. So I think it offers really for every need, we have a solution in this office.
And do people have like their fixed desk, or is it like moving desks and?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. We have not only open space, but we have also flexible desks, which makes it also interesting because you are not forced to sit with your department. You can also sit with other departments, with colleagues you join. And I think we have a lot of flexibility. We have approximately 400 people in our Munich headquarters. And I think the satisfaction, we have been checking this with a survey and so on, the satisfaction is very, very high. But it's also attractive, from a design point of view. You have a lot of flowers, sustainability, modern. So we enjoy our new home.
Maybe Christina will have to go and record a podcast from there, no?
We could. And we could also get like the architecture point of view, no?
Exactly.
But it's very interesting, indeed, the way that the space also influences the actual ways of working in a way, because the way that you design something, it's going to influence the way that people feel in that space, the way they function, and also the way they interact with each other, not just, with the objects around them. And it feels very much so what you're describing, Volker, like not just a space that's aesthetically pleasing, but rather a space that has been designed to promote these new ways of working. And I wonder, like from your side, because you've been around for a minute and you've seen things change a lot. So how have you personally adapted to that?
I mean, I must say now, I enjoy very much working this new office. I had in the old building, I had my own office, including integrated meeting room, the coffee machine directly in front of my office, and the assistant sitting next door. And there were days where I spent 10, 12 hours in my office, and basically I have not seen anyone. And now we have actually 6 individual offices in the entire building. For confidentiality reasons, I have one of these, but it's basically a very, very small functional office. So if I want to spend time with the colleagues, I go to the collaboration areas, and I'm trying to sit more or less every day with somebody different. This is interesting for our employees to see somebody from the senior management, but it's also super interesting for me to meet the colleagues. And for me, when you talk more about the digital world, maybe it was a little bit easier to adapt to these new ways of working, because I'm used to manage a business and my organization leveraging digital tools. There are only 2 of my 12 line reports which are in the same office, in the Munich office. Mm-hmm. For line managers being used to have the organization, the same location, it was partially, I would say, a massive change. But I think our culture of trust and empowerment was very helpful to manage this situation. So we have also supported our leaders managing this change, the transformation, the transfer to home office. And for us, digitalization remains very high on the agenda. And we are trying, of course, or we're continuing to upskill our colleagues and also in the hybrid way of working. It's actually interesting. We talk so much about ourselves as a company, how we are working, but also how we are doing business with our retail partners has changed a lot and needed adaptation. I mean, I remember when I was active in sales, you were visiting the customers basically on a frequent basis. And now we did trainings for our sales staff on virtual selling, because the dynamics are very different from negotiating in the same room. So it's not only the internal what has changed, but also externally there was a massive change of how we are doing business.
Yeah, I think it was the head of British Airways the other day that said that he made like an official statement saying that business travel, would not go back to pre-COVID levels. And I think this is a good example, no?
Yeah, our experience is it's increasing again, but not to the levels pre-COVID. And I think we all appreciate, it's not only a cost question, it's also a well-being question. I mean, when I reflect how much time I spent traveling before COVID, I think for me, it was a positive change that I do today much more via Teams.
No, I echo that. And I was just telling you guys before we started the podcast, I was just in London and I was counting door to door from my hotel to my house. It was 8 hours. Like, it's just a 4-hour flight, but you are missing a full day, which can have an impact on work and workload, but as well as the time that you have at home, recharging your loved one. So I fully echo that, Volker.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the days of traveling always for one meeting, that's become the exception and not the norm. And Volker, speaking about digital, obviously in these years we have also seen the consolidation really of e-commerce and digital routes to market in FMCG. How has that impacted or transformed your business? And also what different routes to market are you seeing? Because I know that apart from like dealing with online retailers, you're also doing some work in direct to consumer, for example.
I mean, digital has been without any question and is still a big disruptor in our business and in many, many areas. I mean, it's in marketing for sure, digital marketing, but also supply chain. We talked a little bit about supply chain earlier, but also in sales, a lot of things have been changing. Concerning go-to-market, our main sales channel is retail, i.e. brick and mortar. We have approximately 9% of our branded business in e-commerce, and this varies, of course, country by country and category by category. And as you rightly said, we have also a couple of direct-to-consumer platforms, like, for example, for washer-absorbent underwear. And this is for, I'm always saying, high-value products, low shelf rotation, and a broad assortment. It's a very, very interesting sales channel. But D2C is, for me, much more than a sales channel because it's our opportunity to interact directly with our consumers, and it's a great source of innovation. So in washer-absorbent underwear, we get a lot of new ideas from our consumers. So overall, the availability of data is a big change. And how we are doing business today, generating insights, following the consumer journey, or also as an enabler for net revenue management. I mean, business looks completely different than 5 years ago.
Of course it does. And I think RGM is one of the things that we've been discussing lately quite a bit in the podcast. I remember at some point I had seen the definition of D2C, which said D2C equals e-commerce plus brand relationship. So essentially it's kind of like this portal to connect directly with your consumers. But I wonder if like digital is one big pillar of transformation and one big buzzword, the other one would probably be sustainability. So what are you guys doing in that front?
I think this is an area where Essity is extremely active. It's absolutely part of our company's DNA. We are recognized in corporate nights as one of the 100 most sustainable companies in the world. This is something we are really proud of. And we really take it, this is not marketing, we really do it. And we are also a sparrings partner for the United Nations Foundation, and our own sustainability framework is following the 17 sustainability goals defined by the United Nations Foundation. Our focus is on avoiding plastic. We have in some of our projects, of course, plastic and also the packaging. It's by the nature of the tissue business, sustainable forest and fiber management. Carbon footprint is a big topic, but also energy and water savings. I think what we are doing maybe a little bit differently than others, we are not only focusing on our own production, but we truly try to be end-to-end. That means in our sustainability concepts, we are involving suppliers on one side, but also the retail customers on the other side. So really end-to-end.
And another topic that I think is quite interesting, especially in this moment, I saw on LinkedIn recently that you recently signed the Lead Network's Gender Equity Pledge, which basically commits you to have a minimum of 40% of women at all management levels, right? Sorry, go ahead.
No, our target is to have 40-60 on all management levels. This is our target, which we have communicated and what we are working on. But I'm always saying it's about diversity. It's about 40-60. So really, because we have also a couple of departments like any other companies which are female dominated. So this is also not diversity. So important is, let's say 40-60 is our target in all management levels.
And why commit to this now when there's seemingly less PR and less political pressure on that type of policy?
Yeah, I think you should not always go with the flow. You should also sometimes go with what you believe in. And I think our company, and including myself, we have a very, very strong commitment to D&I. My leadership team has worked out a so-called D&I manifesto, and that is guiding us in our business, what we are doing. Personally, I think everybody has experienced that diverse teams perform better, and there is a higher level of employee satisfaction. So gender, now we talked about gender, this is only one important criteria. In my management team, I have more than 40% of females. I have 8 different nationalities out of the 12, and a very diverse age structure. And when I saw Lead, I felt that it stands absolutely for our target to empower female talent. It provides networking and training opportunities for our employees. And this is something I'm truly passionate about, to drive D&I in our organization. So this was for me an absolute privilege to sign the Lead pledge with the CEO of Lead, Alison Zimmerman.
And I guess that during your career, you've seen like how the management rooms demographics have changed and become more diverse. I don't know if there's any like immediate, and this may sound a bit transactional. I don't want it to sound transactional, but have you seen any like immediate benefits of having different voices in the room?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, diverse perspective, and I think, as I said, enhances employee satisfaction and improves decision making, and that leads to a better overall performance. I think I'm used now in the last years to work in international environment. This is another aspect, that you have diverse. But I mean, I am absolutely have seen performance improvements. When you leave room also, it's not only to have diversity in the room, but also leave space for diversity in a conversation. This is sometimes the more critical one. It's not tick the boxes. But if you leave space for diversity in the room, it improves definitely decision-making and business performance.
I love this give space part that you're mentioning, because it's not just about allocating the chairs around the table, but rather about allocating the right, as you mentioned, space and creating also that safe space. And Volker, looking at your profile, you've been passionate about a lot of things also outside the street kind of like corporate career. I understand that you're the president of the European Tissue Symposium, and you're also on the board of brand manufacturers. Can I ask why? Why did you make these choices?
I mean, there are sector-specific questions and challenges. An individual company, even if you are a market leader like Essity in many European categories, we cannot solve this on our own. And this is why we have trade associations, and they are acting as a voice of the industry. And in the work with the European Commission, I think this is much more powerful if you have an industry approach. And these trade associations live from the engagement of the members, and this is why we are there.
And when it comes to, I mean, just being also, because obviously if you're in these associations, you have a strong relationship with your peers. How do you, or in general, what's the sentiment of the FMCG manufacturers in Europe in terms of like the brand retailer relationships and dynamics, which are obviously always a thing that's top of list in terms of priorities for a CEO?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think the role of these industry bodies is to provide industry expertise and knowledge, what the European Commission cannot have. I mean, that's obvious. And we are contributing, collaborating on consultations related to draft legislation and regulation. And I'm always saying a trade association works in certain parts like a company. You define your strategy, your focus areas, you work with task forces, you define an industry position respecting the limits of compliance, of course. And you identify your main stakeholders, you start the activation supported by professional communications. I think the difference is more decision processes work very much more consensus driven, while in a company it's maybe a little bit more hierarchical. And in the Association for European Brand Manufacturers, of course, the relationship, coming back to the second part of your question, to the retailers is also, of course, a very, very hot topic. We talk a lot about unfair trading practices and so on. And this is a topic we're discussing in these industry bodies.
I just wanted to say that, lately there has been a lot of discussions about how Europe compared to the US might be like more regulated and might not have the same level of competitiveness. Do you see that there is kind of like space, or should there be some space for Europe to become a bit less regulated and increase competitiveness compared to the other markets?
A little bit less regulated and a little bit more competitive. I would even cancel the word less. I think regulation per se is not something negative. Regulation, for example, in areas of health and hygiene, where we are very active, can be something very, very positive. I mean, there is a stronger consumer protection. We talked a little bit about sustainability, quality, safety standards. So it can be something very, very helpful and important. The challenge is more to get the right balance with the competitiveness. And there is an urgent need for Europe, I think the last days have shown that, to step up in competitiveness. And we have seen in the last years a level of regulatory framework which is not healthy. This is costly, impacts operational efficiency, slows down, and very often also kills creativity and innovation. So I think a lot of this was done with a good intention, but it caused enormous bureaucracy and by that loss of competitiveness. So this is definitely one of the challenges, and there is an absolute high need and urgent need to get rid of some of these regulations. Another challenge we have in Europe, of course, are energy prices. As I said earlier, we're in a quite energy-intensive environment, and we have lost in many areas competitiveness to the increase in energy costs. And that limits, of course, also growth and employment. And last but not least, I think we also need to support sustainable innovation and investment. You have heard in the last days what Germany with the new government, or actually even in the old constellation, is trying to do. So I think protectionism is not the right answer. I think Europe has to increase the competitiveness. So I support what is ongoing there at the moment, but there is also a need for urgency.
As Europeans, as three Europeans in this room, do we have reasons to be optimistic, Volker?
I don't know. We have seen also in the past situations where you could get depressed, but that doesn't help in this. We have to find our way as Europeans, and we need to rely on our true friends. So I'm always an optimistic person, Daniel.
Great. We are as well, I think, Christina and me. And Volker, when you first came to the show, I wasn't asking this question, which now has become a tradition that we ask all our guests, or practically all of them, which is, if you were going back to the beginning of your career, which when we were talking before the show, I think you mentioned was in controlling, with everything that you've learned from then till now, if you had to give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
I'm always saying, follow your heart and be authentic. This would be my advice.
This was Volker Zöller, President Consumer Goods EMEA at Essity. Christina, what are your takeaways from this?
First of all, how incredible is it that he was one of the first guests to come to the show? But then how many things have happened since you guys recorded that episode, right? Like all the things that we're mentioning about how the whole way of doing business and the whole way of working and interacting has changed. So I thought that this was one of the most interesting guests.
And it's interesting because sometimes we think that people like Volker that are like C-level, that maybe they're like in their ivory tower and they don't feel the differences and the changes that below. And clearly, like, even his way of working has definitely changed. And I thought that the setup they have in the Munich office is really like business 2.0, no?
It is, but this is also what distinguishes these leaders who not just embrace or accept change, but kind of like actually lead it and live the things that they are communicating internally and externally. And overall, the way that he positioned all this part of the change around the values and the culture around commitment, care, courage, collaboration, and how actually a culture of trust and empowerment is the key to support the leaders in the organization. But as he mentioned, you need to pair it with the right tools. And this is where digitalization comes in, and where you also need to take care of upskilling your people.
And spend money and time as well, no? Because ultimately you need the infrastructure, and you can't expect like change management just to happen like that, no?
But a change is a strategy, and what strategy is resource allocation. So you need to make sure that you're allocating the right amount of resources, whatever that might be.
I said it without sophistication, that's true, but resource allocation, that's the word. I thought it was interesting also, like, that as an FMCG, they do have DTC. So I thought that was very interesting. He said high volume, low shelf assortment. And for example,
high value.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. And also a way to drive innovation. And I think that we've seen this quite a bit. Like there was, I mean, of course, we all know the case of Nike where, dropping the whole route to market to go just with a D2C model. That's not what we're talking about, but rather a specific channel that had a specific job to be done and serves the purpose for you to have this direct consumer engagement, which allows you also to test things and collect the insights that you need.
Yeah. And I think that's something that really differentiates Essity as a company, is the whole sustainability piece. As we talked with their chief strategy officer, Sahil Teshfu, I think it was a couple of years ago already.
It was one of the first episodes we did together.
Oh, really?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, it was October 2023. We'll leave that one on the show notes as well. But it's interesting how that is really still a priority for them.
Yes, and across the different sustainability pillars. But what I mostly like about their approach is how they think network rather than just internal adjustments. So including your suppliers and your retailers in whatever change you're trying to bring.
Yeah. Also, the diversity piece I thought was interesting. When I told them, why do it now? About like, sometimes you have to go with what you believe in, not with the current, like the common things is right now.
But someone could also argue, if not now, that it's most needed than ever, then when?
Yeah, no, that's true. Well, but you know that there's a whole current that's going the other way in some ways, so.
Yes, and that's where we're going to see kind of like distinguishing between different companies, their approach, and what they stand for.
Exactly. No, and it will be interesting to see also like in the next few, because basically like European and American companies were kind of in this kind of same competitive ground until now. But now that the world is changing in many ways, it will be interesting to see what the dynamics look like, no?
For sure. And this is where I will echo also what Volker just said, right? About bringing the diverse perspective and the decision making and how this is working as an advantage to the companies that have it compared to the ones who don't. So perhaps it's also going to tilt the scales in the opposite way than we believe.
Yeah, you never know. Well, let's see. We'll be here next 5 years. Let's see how things evolve. Thanks, Christina, for your takeaways. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, haven't touched for this for a while, please leave us a review. That would be very helpful, and it will help other people in the consumer goods and retail industry find us and listen to inspiring conversations like the one we had with Volker today. Have a great day, and we'll see you in the next episode of the FMCG Guys every Wednesday and every Saturday. Have a great day.